Twilight Zone. I have been super blessed from having this house for the last like 5 years or so. And what is like really special about it is the fact that I feel like I'm Mr. Rogers, but I get to host spiritual discussion groups while a little high. And so let me show you the space, So over here, this is one of our lounge areas. So people line up right here, just hanging out right here, sitting over here, and they're just talking about subjects that are philosophical and spiritual. So tonight's topic is going to be commencement. So I'm going to be highlighting people who stood in front of a crowd stepping into a new era of their lives, and they were receiving information that would be invaluable for their success. Today is going to be a soup potluck, which is super appropriate for the winter. The soups are going to be laid out over here, and then here's my contribution. This is vegan adobo chili, and it's made with coconut milk, adobo poblanos, and sweet potato as the primary ingredients. Ba-bam! So we got food, we got discussion. Let me show you what we're talking about today. Everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief that I am the absolute center of the universe. This is each of our natural default settings. And so that idea that we're born into this life of feeling like everything's catering to us and therefore we're the center of the universe is a problematic idea. And so David explores this thoroughly in the commencement speech, This is Water, and we're going to be exploring that topic this evening. So Mountain Ministries is ultimately founded on the idea of perennial philosophy. I didn't find out what perennial philosophy was until after I had been hosting Mountain Ministries for about a year, but it turns out I had been a practitioner and wasn't aware of that terminology. So Perennial Philosophy is by Aldous Huxley, and he discovered after studying all the major world religions that they were all pointing to the same thing. They were all pointing towards loving others as yourself. And whether you took the path of JC or Allah or the Wicca Mother Goddess, as long as you arrive to that point at the summit that is regarding the oneness underneath all of us and living with that truth rather than living with selfishness. Follow me. Okay, so now we are in the beginning stages of the social mixer. We got over the awkward hump. No matter the event and no matter how good you are, like at the beginning is always going to be an awkward phase where people are warming up to each other. And that's just the nature of a gathering. People come into situations with baggage, with defenses, with the weight of the day. And sometimes they need time to unload that and realize that this is a safe space to be themselves. And so right now, I began with icebreakers. These are vague suggestions, so behind every card is just something silly to dwell on. This one is meditation, disguised as activity. Who knows what the fuck that means? That's why it's a vague suggestion. And so you give people cards like this to get them to talk. And I'm also giving people name tags and assigning them by color. We have blue team, green team, red team, and orange team. And why that's important is because I use the colors to mix people up so that they're constantly meeting with new people to discuss our upcoming prompts. So our prompts are going to include the David Foster Wallace This is Water speech, and I talked about that already. So we will be checking in again after this next phase. Are ready, we will do a quick meeting in the corner, and then once we're finished we'll break out into groups. So enjoy yourselves, enjoy the food. We will be commencing shortly on our commencement theme. So the reason why I think that having conversation leaders is important is because someone to facilitate the flow of the conversation is helpful for the group to have a common goal to work towards. And so I really appreciate not just dropping a set of questions in the group, and instead having someone who is in charge of stoking the fire. And ideally you want that person to be someone experienced who can guide it to where it's the most insightful for everyone involved. The whole purpose of having someone guide the discussion is to create a comfortable space for folks to come forward with the ideas and to evenly distribute the spotlight, and to also make sure that, like, if someone doesn't want to talk, the spotlight doesn't need to fall on them. So essentially making it like a comfortable space to exist in and be free and share your perspective. And I know that each of you are capable of it because I've experienced that with you myself. We're friends for a reason, and I really appreciate your presence here. So just be yourself and read the questions to the folks, and I'm sure that everything that it needs to be will be. Cool. Alright, so something I like to do before we break out into groups is do a team cheer. So what this is gonna look like is Sherpa Squad on 3. You fucking ready for this shit? Yeah. Let's get it. Let's get it. Alright. Shit, yeah. 1, 2, 3. Sherpa Squad! Okay, so what inspired this topic is a commencement speech by David Foster Wallace. And he leads with a parable that I think is very short but thematic. It goes, there are 2 young fish, and they're crossing the path of an older fish. And the older fish says, "Good morning, boys, how's the water?" And the 2 young fish, they don't reply, they keep swimming along. And when they're out of earshot, they whisper, "What the hell is water?" And so, essentially, what is this thing that we're all swimming in but we fail to acknowledge? And he goes into this idea that what we do acknowledge is a self-centered universe. Because when we're growing up, everyone's perspective is foreign to us, but our own is so intimate and immediately accessible. And so this natural default setting then is the ego, is the separation, is the self-idolatry. And we are all born with that, and he calls it the natural default setting. And so his commencement speech goes over how to overcome that natural default setting and how to find your way to grace. But for today's discussion, I've narrowed it down to a choice few quotes, and we'll be discussing those quotes. And so we have our conversation leaders. Raise your hand if you're a conversation leader. They are going to be... Thank you. They are going to be leading the talks. I've given you each color-coded name tags. Some of you are orange, red, blue, and green. Please find those respective groups. And I might need to jostle things around because if I'm being honest, I wasn't really great at keeping track of where the colors were going. And so if I have to switch things around, forgive me and have grace already. But otherwise, try and find your groups. The first question is, what does someone need to experience in order to realize they're not the center of the universe? And for me, what a person needs to realize that they're not the center is humiliation, honestly. I feel like when there's self-centeredness, there's a need to humble yourself to the greater community, the inner one. There's something outside of you that is greater than you, and learning that takes realizing that when you become the center of your universe, like, you're just going to get hurt.
I definitely agree with what you said. I think that an experience of great humility is, in fact, required, because that's what happened for me, and that's what happened for many of the other people that I know that had the experience of realizing they're not the main character, essentially, is they had to have something crazy happen to them.
The next question is, why does David suggest that it's better to have grace for others rather than prioritize your own desires? Because when you prioritize your own desires, you worship things that eat you alive. Money, power, intellect, women, beauty. It all leads to lack. It all leads to unfulfillment. And really the only thing that leads to feeling whole is knowing that you contributed something good.
the amount of forgiveness you have for others is equal to the amount of forgiveness you have for yourself.
Oh shit. The amount of forgiveness you have for other people is equal to the amount of forgiveness you give to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that is the type of quotage that's happening. Check this out. Check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. That is the type of quotage that's happening all throughout the evening right now. And so that little nugget, I think, is God touching down and revealing His will upon us. And I get to harvest that and help how I'm moving through the world in such a way that is closer.
Yes, sir.
David says, there's no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship is that the alternative will eat you alive. If you worship money, you will feel poor. If you worship beauty, you will feel ugly. If you worship power, you will feel weak. If you worship intellect, you will feel dumb. And all of these are unconscious, ego-driven pursuits. And that is why they inherently fail. If you don't have a set of moral principles as your guiding spirituality, then you'll choose things that destroy you. You taste the candy and it's sweet, but you don't think about the toothache that's on its way. Right now, we're at that point in the conversation where things are probably starting to burn out. And so I'm going to invite everyone back into the kitchen for food. And after giving everyone a little break, we're going to break out into another discussion group. And by then, I'll have a different sort of miniature presentation about what we're going to be speaking about next. Hey y'all, just to give you a heads up, once everyone is finished, let's mosey back into the kitchen, and then I'll know that like people are ready, and we'll have like a 15-minute chow down time, and we got a hand in the back. What's up, Eric?
Are we just doing question one right now?
Oh no, shit! It was the whole thing. Did everyone stop time?
We're going.
Oh, you're good. Okay, cool. Perfect. Okay, yeah, just to give you a heads up, just migrate in here when y'all are ready.
3 more questions.
Cool. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline and being able to truly care about other people. That is being educated and understanding how to think. A real education has nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with awareness. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting. So the question is, if each of our default setting is self-centeredness, what sort of education would we need to become more aware? And for me, I think it would be loving others as myself. And when I love others as myself, like I change my universe to seek their well-being too.
I feel as though the education that we would want to share to help people get to that point of actual intelligence is the understanding that love is always going to be a better option than hate or violence. Because I feel as though the general education that's taught now leaves a lot of spaces where the correct answer for most people is choose hate and violence for these specific situations. And I feel like that's where the main issue comes up.
It's interesting that people think they're awake but could still want violence. And so if I could have the 3 conversation leaders standing over here. Cool. So before we get into our breakout groups, something I wanted to highlight was our next segment is going to be Steve Jobs' commencement speech. One second. Thank you, Lisa. And so it begins with him being a founder of Apple, but then he gets kicked out of his own company. And in the process of getting kicked out of his own company, he founds Pixar. Like he kickstarts Pixar to be this powerhouse juggernaut, like animated studio. And it comes from a failure. And his story arc is essentially taking failure, taking moments where he followed what he did, what was in his excitement rather than what was best on paper. But then his excitement led him to his dream better than the paper did. There is a lot of value in following that inner voice. And there are 3 quotes that he shares in regards to the inner voice that I think are really fun to talk about and explore further. And so our next group is going to focus on that. And my challenge for you all is to find yourself in a group where everyone's entirely new.
Who wants to join my group?
I need to be in one of these two groups.
Question 1. Much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. It was impossible to connect the dots looking forward, but it was very clear looking backwards 10 years later. You have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. Believing the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart. Steve seems to imply that following your curiosity and intuition is the same as following your heart. Do you agree? How else do you discern when a message is coming from your heart? And for me, I feel like the heart speaks to me in unexpected excitement.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I've learned throughout my experience that you have to trust the process. There is no other way. If you start trying to plan for things, it's not really going to go very good. To the point where I've almost developed a strong resistance when people ask me about plans, because I'm like, no, please, I just want it to work out the way that it's going to. And so often God will come into your life through other people making plans, and then I realize that there's so many things that I don't have to remember because there's people around me who remember it for me.
Yeah, and so he has this quote that goes, "None of this would have happened if I hadn't gotten fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life." And so the question then is, do you have an example of awful tasting medicine in your life? For me, probably the bitterest medicine I've ever had was a relationship where I promised the world but then didn't deliver on that promise. I instead didn't realize the gravity of the situation and did the selfish, the natural default thing, which is to preserve oneself. And why that was bitter medicine was because things unfolded for that person which weren't great, and I have guilt about not showing up when I said I would have. And so the bitter medicine then is to really be careful of what you promise other people and really slow down in what you're able to commit. And the highest degree of love is to be able to love unconditionally. And even if the other person slights you and makes life difficult, you don't stop showing up for them. And until you get to that point of love where you're practicing it, you shouldn't say that that's what your love is.
When I started this spiritual path, I made a lot of progress really quickly. And then in that, I held it above certain people and treated them very unkind in the moment. And then that resulted in me having a swift moment of karma where I made an outburst out of anger, showing that I really hadn't made as much progress as I thought. And then I crashed my car and almost killed 2 of my close friends. So that was my medicine, and now I'm here.
Today is one of those days, stuck between yesterday and tomorrow.
If you had a good conversation, say boo, boo, boo. Thank you so much for attending the theme discussion of commencement. Thank you very much for contributing your energy. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And so with that, I open the floor to y'all. Is there anything that stood out to you that you want to take away?
So the biggest thing that I'm going to take away is intuition and heart and the difference between the two, and we got into a conversation about how we make decisions. It was really funny. It connected to Star Trek and something called the Prime Directive. You have an intuition to do something, but logically you're kind of fighting it, and your anxieties are telling you, I don't want to step out of my comfort zone. I don't want to go and follow this even though something is telling me to. For me, it makes it easier to follow that direction and to follow that intuition I can get rid of all the anxieties. It's my prime directive. I feel it and I'm going to follow it. And so that is something I'm going to take with me.
I really enjoyed the question and the conversation around connecting the dots. It's hard to see or understand how the dots will eventually connect, but looking back, you can learn from the dots being connected. And it kind of reminded me of like a spider web and like how life just is kind of like this like field of different things that are all related in one way or another and can be connected to each other.
Something I took away was just how much of different balances that are needed for different things. It has to do more with whether to interfere or not if we see something that seems wrong. When do we steer off the path that we're on, naturally disrupt it, but maybe that's the medicine we needed to go in a different direction.
I thought too was that it takes a lot of privilege to be on the path of self-discovery.
Yeah, came up.
It kind of just reinforces. It kind of just reinforces trust the process. You know, you never know if the shitty thing that you're going through right now is the medicine. You know, because some ingredients aren't very good on their own. When I was a kid, I loved cinnamon and sugar toast, so I got the cinnamon and I poured it into my mouth. Like, before the cinnamon challenge, and I was like, this is disgusting. So sometimes, you know, you're gonna add a little bit of cinnamon to the recipe so that it can come out delicious.
Ooh.
Literal food for thought.
We've all got a mission, or as the alchemist calls it, a personal legend. This wild dream that we all have in our head that we assume is a pipe dream. Our whole purpose here on this earth is to try our hardest, no matter the obstacle, to attain whatever that personal legend that we have is. So, judging by what you all have gone through, are you ready?
So, something I like to do at the end of every evening is a team cheer. So, how we're going to do this is we're all going to put our hands in the center. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like 1, 2, 3, commencement! Ready? Alright, everyone get your hands in, everyone get your hands in, everyone get your hands in. Alright. Alright, we rehearsed this. I trust you. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, commencement! So the evening went as well as it could have, and that is a really good thing. Everything was, to me, perfect. I think the main thing was that the questions were super thought-provoking and really took a facet of what this person was saying and made people reflect on the larger diamond that it was a part of. And it was cool to see people be open and to explore ideas with each other. It seemed as though people were picking up things that they've been looking for within themselves. And I'm really grateful to have created a setting where that could happen. I think that clarity comes from acknowledging our spirituality, acknowledging how our intuition is our radio frequency to God, and we as vessels are bees to the hive mind, where we have this antenna that's our intuition receiving the will of God, and it's up to us to act on that. And when we do, we create communal spaces and come together in readiness to bring more love into tomorrow. And that to me is one of the many reasons why Mountain Ministries is something I feel called to do.